Hi, today I want to talk to you about some of the basics to do with Java programming, and in particular have a look at the BlueJ environment. The first thing I want to talk about is a project. A project is a workspace. When we create a project in BlueJ, we're actually creating a folder in which we can store our Java code. So when we click on Project, New Project, we're creating a corresponding folder on the hard drive where we can store all of our Java files. Our Java files are stored in what we call classes. A class is where we write our code, and an example of a class definition is public class test. There are three parts to a class declaration: the visibility, in this case public, the name of the structure, which is a class, and the name of the class. Once we have three pieces of information in our code, we need to put curly brackets, an open curly bracket at the start of our class and a closed curly bracket at the end. In Java, all brackets have pairs. If you create an open bracket, you must create a closing bracket pair. And all code must be written inside the open bracket and the closed bracket for the class. So what is an object? An object is an instance of a class. If you want to execute the code that you write in a class, you need to create an object so that the code can be called or executed within the runtime system. A constructor is the part of the system that creates an object. A constructor is a special structure in Java. The structure for a constructor has two parts to it: the visibility, in this case public, the name of the class including case sensitivity. In the example I'm showing here, I have a class called test, so in order to create a constructor, I have to call my constructor test with a capital T and the exact spelling of the class. The constructor also has parentheses after the name of the class is given. And like everything else in Java, you must have an open curly bracket and a closed curly bracket for a constructor. The constructor, being definition in the code, must be inside the class definition. And you can see in the example that I have here that I have a very simple class called test, and inside the class definition I have a constructor called test that just simply has an open and closed bracket. Okay, so let's move on and have a look at BlueJ. So what I've done so far is just created a new project which creates a folder in which I can store all of my Java code. The next thing I need to do is to create a class. I click on the new class button and I type in the name of my class. I click OK and a class descriptor shows up in my project. You'll notice that there are grey stripes on this class. This means that the class has not been compiled. That is, the code that has been written inside this class is not ready for execution. Now, when we create a new class in BlueJ, it gives us a default template. I'm going to ignore that for the moment and actually get rid of it and just have a look at a class and a constructor from first principles. So when I go into my class, I'm just going to delete everything in it and start again from the beginning. So here is my class. A class has a visibility modifier, in this case public, so that the class is available to other objects. The name of the class, and of course the second parameter that we give in our code here is to tell the system this is a class structure. Now, all code for a class must be written inside the curly brackets. You'll notice here when I click on one of my curly brackets that a grey box is put around its matching pair. This is very helpful when you're having issues trying to find out whether you've missed a bracket in your system. Now the next thing I'm going to do is indent and create my constructor for this class. So again, I give a public modifier for my constructor. The constructor must have the exact name of the class, then parentheses. Then, again with the curly brackets, to say that all code that needs to be executed when I create this object, this test object, needs to be executed. Everything inside the open and close curly brackets for the constructor must be executed when I call the constructor and create the object. So now I have a class. It will compile. It works nicely. If I had have made a mistake and accidentally said that my constructor was lowercase t instead of uppercase t, if I try to compile at this point, I get a compile error. Now the error is that the system thinks that I'm trying to create a method, not a constructor. A constructor does not have a return type. It doesn't need one because a constructor creates an object of the class, so I don't need to declare a return type. Right, so now we have a class. I'll compile it up. I can create an object of this class in BlueJ by right-clicking on my class and selecting New Test. What I'm doing in here by selecting New Test is calling the constructor I just created. When I click on the constructor call, it will create the object and it will show the object here, down here in the object bench area of BlueJ. So when I click on it, it will ask me what I want to call this object. I could call it whatever I like. I'm going to leave it at the default name test1, and then when I click OK, you see my object created in the object bench here. There are no methods, so I can't do anything with my object at this point. So let's just remove it. If I decided to put some code, let's say for instance that I would like to print the string hello. When I compile up my class, when I call new test open close bracket on my class, it's going to execute this constructor. In order to create an object, it calls the constructor and executes all the code in the constructor. So next time I go through and call my constructor, it's going to print out hello on the terminal window. So you'll see hello now on the terminal window. That's because when it creates the object, it executes every line of code in the constructor. Okay, now let's have another look at my test class. This time, I'm going to create another constructor. Again, it's public, it's test, and it's going to be created in my system here. But what I'm going to do, since I already have a constructor with no arguments passed to it, nothing in the parentheses, this time I'm going to create a constructor that takes a number. And this constructor is going to say perhaps goodbye. So now I will have two options when I look at creating my object of my class. Notice now I have two calls that I can make. This is because I have two constructors. Now, if I take the constructor I just created, which takes a parameter, not only does it ask me what name I want for my object, it asks me for the parameter. Now, the parameter must be an integer, so perhaps I could just say 1 or something over here, and then call it. And then you'll notice here that I'm executing my goodbye on the terminal window rather than hello. The next structure that I want to look at is a method. Now, a method has a visibility, a return type. In this case, I'm going to show you a procedure. And then the name of the method. I'm just going to call my method something really exciting like method 1. And for the moment I'm not going to have any parameters in my method. Right, here is a method. A method has a visibility, in this case public. It has a return type, in this case void is a data type that means empty. Then I have my method name. Now, all methods have parentheses in them so that the system knows this is a procedure. This is a bunch of code that I can call throughout my system on any object that I have. So method 1, again, I'm just going to print some stuff on the screen. So let's say something a little bit different, just so you can see what's being executed here. And then when I compile this up, what will happen now is I will have two constructors, test and test that takes a number. So I have my default constructor, which takes no argument, and I have my alternate or class constructor that takes parameters to it. I also have a method. Method 1 can only be called on an object. So a constructor creates the object. Once I have the object, I can call method 1 on it. So let's go and have a look at that. So this time I'm going to create my test object using the default constructor. So I'm going to get hello showing up on my screen. Now you'll notice here that every single run I've had in my system is still on the terminal window. If you don't like it, you can clear it out. Now what I'm going to do, I have my little object here. Once you have an object, you can call any method that you have declared and used in the class. So in this case, I can call method 1 now that says hi there. So, and I can call my method again, hi there, hi there. As long as I have an object, I can call any method that has been declared as public within my system. Now, let's have a look at calling a method. So in my default constructor here, instead of creating my object using the default constructor and then calling method 1 on the object in the object bench, I can call my method in code. So method 1 doesn't return anything and it doesn't take any parameters. So all I really have to do is type in the name of the method and anything that needs to be passed into it in the brackets. So when I compile up this class now and call the default constructor, it'll say hello and then it'll say hi there, and I won't have to write any more code or select or click anything else in the system. Let's have a look. See, when I called the constructor, not only did it execute the line of code that said hello, it also called the method 1, which also put hi there on the screen. Join me again for part 2 to look at some more interesting basics of Java.